Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. How's it going everybody? Jacob here at We the Fandom, and in today's video, I'll be reviewing episode 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, titled A Stranger in a Strange Land. Now before I review the episode, I wanted to give a quick recap of Boba Fett's history in the canon for those of you not familiar. When Jango Fett agreed to have his DNA serve as the template for the clone army, he requested as part of his payment an unaltered clone that he would raise as his son, to train as a bounty hunter and likely in the ways of the Mandalorians, as Jango himself was a Mandalorian foundling just like Din Djarin. At the beginning of the Clone Wars, Boba watched his father die at the hands of Mace Windu and later infiltrated a group of clone cadets in order to murder the Jedi Master, but in the end he couldn't follow through. He would be arrested, but later break out of jail and start his career as a bounty hunter, working his way through the guild to eventually become known as the deadliest hunter in the galaxy. At some point, during the events of The Empire Strikes Back, he would be hired by Darth Vader to capture Luke, Leia, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, end up capturing Han Solo and placing him in carbonite in order to cash in on a bounty with Jabba the Hutt. Which brings us to the events of Return of the Jedi, in which Luke kind of failed to save Han and Leia until R2-D2 showed up with his lightsaber, leading to a very clumsy battle during which a blind Han Solo damaged Boba Fett's jetpack, sending him to the Sarlaac Pit. And up to that point in the Star Wars universe, it was known that nobody survives the stomach of a Sarlacc. So for decades, if you weren't reading the Legends novels and comic books, then you were left to believe that Boba Fett was dead. And when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they said that everything except for 6 live-action movies and the Clone Wars series were no longer canon. So if you were a strict Disney canon follower, then you believed Boba Fett to be dead. Flash forward to 2020, Season 2 of The Mandalorian, where Boba Fett shows up to reclaim his armor from Din Djarin, after which he aids the Mandalorian in his quest to get Grogu back. But how did Boba go from the ending of Return of the Jedi to showing up here without his armor? That's what the Book of Boba Fett aims to answer. Now this series leaves off with Boba Fett from the finale of The Mandalorian Season 2, where he and Fennec Shand had showed up to Jabba's palace, killed Bib Fortuna, the former major domo or head of house basically, and took over as crime lord, though they actually call him daimyo in the series, which is interesting. Daimyo were the feudal lords of ancient Japan, second only to the shogun or the emperor. Not really sure how that translates to Star Wars or why they went with that term, but in this first episode we see Boba meeting with a few of the people who will pay him tribute as the new daimyo. After one such meeting, he is attacked by a group of assassins. He, Fennec Shand, and 2 Gamorrean guards are just barely able to hold them off because Boba wasn't willing to travel with the normal retinue that Jabba would have, which is fine. You know, Boba says he wants to walk around on his own 2 feet, and that's great. But there's a pretty far gap between being a fat, helpless piece of crap like Jabba the Hutt and being combat ready. Fennec has 0 firearms, and Boba only has a sidearm. Yes, I know he has his wrist rockets, but they were barely enough to help them survive. No matter what era of Star Wars you're in, walking around the cities of Tatooine as a crime lord with 2 Gamorrean guards and an unarmed assassin, and you yourself without proper protection, just doesn't seem smart. Now, if that description of the episode seems short, that's because it was. The episode is only about 39 minutes with credits, but it was also full of flashback scenes depicting Boba's time after escaping the Sarlacc, where he was basically a slave to the Tusken Raiders. Though by the end of the episode, we see that he had started to fall in favor with them after saving one of their younglings from a creature that looks like it basically came from an old Godzilla film. Of course, we also learn how he escaped the Sarlacc in the first place. Basically, his Beskar armor likely helps him survive the stomach acid initially, and while in there, he regained consciousness, found a dead stormtrooper, sucked some oxygen out of the tube in the stormtrooper's armor, and then punched a hole into the Sarlacc using his flamethrower to kill it, after which he burrowed through its stomach and out to the surface where he was found by Jawas. Now, these Jawas had no pity for him at all. They thought he was dead, and so they took his armor, leading to them encountering Cobb Vanth from the episode of The Mandalorian called The Marshal, who had also been stranded in the desert, and when meeting with the Jawas, traded the Mandalorian armor for crystals, which is how it eventually makes its way to Din Djarin. Of course, in Boba's situation, he had the armor stolen, and then he was taken slave by Tusken Raiders. Now, in some ways, this is similar to the Legends story of how he escaped the Sarlacc, but it is also very different. Instead of telling that story here, I'm actually going to make that a separate video. We'll also have to wait until next week to find out who sent the assassins after Boba, and something I'm hoping for from this series is that we'll go beyond Tatooine, as well as maybe meet some of the other bounty hunters and crime lords that Boba has dealt with in the past. Because even though I'm not the most familiar with Star Wars lore, I'm pretty sure that Jabba's jurisdiction wasn't solely relegated to Tatooine, so I'm hoping they explore more of the Star Wars universe. My main problem with this series so far, and the problem I foresee myself having with the rest of the series, can be summarized in the description of the episode, which is no longer just a hired gun. Boba Fett reinvents himself on Tatooine alongside Fennec Shand. I don't want to see Boba Fett reinvent himself. I want to see him him as the most dangerous bounty hunter in the galaxy. His Legends continuity has been erased, but new canon comic books have been written where we get to see some of his bounty hunting exploits. But what we haven't gotten is much live action Boba Fett, as outside of a couple of appearances in the original trilogy to include his fateful fall into the Sarlaac Pit, and then his appearances in the latter half of season 2 of The Mandalorian, specifically the episode The Tragedy, we rarely get to see Boba Fett at his deadliest. His comeback in that episode of The Mandalorian where he gets his armor back and takes out all the stormtroopers was really badass, but for the rest of the series he had a very background role. And I really don't want to see Boba Fett become a fat crime lord. I want to see him be a badass, because Boba Fett used to be featured always wearing the helmet and with the gun in his hand. Writers weren't worried about trying to humanize him. They wanted you to know that this character meant business without him having to say it. He was an old school kind of gunslinger-like character like the ones that Clint Eastwood used to play in the Sergio Leone movies. It made him mysterious, intimidating, and deadly. Now you have Boba Fett sitting in a chair, waiting for tributes, walking around without the helmet on, and getting attacked by assassins in broad daylight without a gun in his hand. Why the writers of this show would try to change him? I can only guess it's because they just don't like the character, which you kind of see a lot of these days. New versions of classic characters being portrayed in ways that go completely against their character. To see people who obviously didn't like the character the way they were, and so they turn them into something else, in which case, why even make a show about Boba Fett if you don't want him to be Boba Fett? They could easily have made a series about some random crime lord in Star Wars. You know why they don't do that? Because they want the name recognition. They want to piggyback off the hard work of creators who put the effort into making Boba Fett a character that people actually like, and then take him to tell a story that they want to tell, even if it doesn't make sense for the character. Looking back at that episode of The Mandalorian, it seems like it was either a bait and switch or they just didn't know if they would ever get to have him again in any type of live action role. My only hope for this show is that we get some flashbacks to pre-Return of the Jedi where Boba Fett was still just a bounty hunter. But let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comment section below. Also, if there's any part of the Legends or canon continuity involving Boba's past that I don't include in these videos, feel free to post those in the comment section because I'm still learning new things myself. But if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. I'll see you all next time. Bye.